And today we have a special guest who has been shaping the tech world for over 19 years. If you have ever used a mobile phone with an amazing camera or marveled at seamless tech integration, there is a good chance that some of that magic was made possible by the work of our guest. Before titles, before accolades, can you tell us about the moment that really shaped your journey?
I was among the top brains in the classroom, but I think I always had that make or break thing in me. Uh, I also feel somehow, the first job that you pick up is really, really important.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of FaceTime with Leaders, powered by Directors Institute, World Council of Directors. I'm your host, Sunny Pancholi, and today we have a special guest who has been shaping the tech world for over 19 years. If you have ever used a mobile phone with an amazing camera or marveled at seamless tech integration, there is a good chance that some of that magic was made possible by the work of our guest. Joining me today is Mr. Prayas Mohanty, a true tech visionary who has seamlessly blended the world of hardware integration and software development. From his leadership role at NVIDIA Graphics Private Limited to his groundbreaking contributions at Samsung Electronics, Mr. Prayas has been at the heart of some of the most exciting mobile technologies of our time. Mr. Prayas, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, Sunny. Really, was that me? Sounds like a different person altogether. But yeah, thank you so much for the humble and gracious introduction. I hope I'm able to share my experience with a lot of young listeners. Looking forward to have the conversation.
Absolutely. So, before we dive into the deep technical aspects, let me give our listeners a glimpse of the kind of impact Mr. Mohanty has had on the tech industry. 19 years of experience has been at the forefront of camera software and multimedia frameworks. He has led teams across multiple continents, collaborated with diverse stakeholders, and launched innovative solutions that have shaped the mobile experience. From developing complex camera drivers for Samsung's flagship phones to leading high performance software projects for NVIDIA, Mr. Prayas has been behind some of the most crucial engineering advancements in the tech industry. So, let's begin. Let's start from the very beginning. Mr. Prayas, in your impressive career, you have worked on everything from mobile softwares to camera drivers. But I want to take you back to the start. Before titles, before accolades, can you tell us about the moment that really shaped your journey?
Sure, that's a good question actually, and it's going to be actually interesting to know my past as well. I'll go back to school. I don't think I was among the top brains in the classroom, but I think I always had that make or break thing in me. But yeah, after having a successful, almost close to 2 decades in the tech industry, working with tech giants and global leaders. I am surprised with whatever I have achieved so far. But yeah, like I said, I always had that make break thing in me. So engineering was the default option, plus the environment around me in the school days. The engineering factor and the engineering coaching and the engineering environment was always there. So I grew up among a lot of engineers. So that probably motivated me to get into the engineering side. But yeah, everything has to come together. So that's how it was. I graduated engineering finally in 2003. And then back then, we didn't have Google. Probably Google was just in making. Ask Jeeves was one of the search engines, which was like extremely slow. When I was graduating, I think the world was dealing with the dot-com crisis. Also, the engineers at that time had solved the millennium problem, the Y2K problem. So the market was catching up, and I didn't know, where to start with. So I picked up a job with one of the tech support as a tech support executive in one of the technical call centers. But soon I realized, that was not the thing why I graduated engineering for. I don't know if I was lucky or my eyes were always in lookout of the right job. I got introduced to a small company in Delhi who were also starting up into the embedded domain. I learned a lot from there. After working with them for close to 1.5 years, I moved to Pune. I joined NVIDIA in 2006. And then since then, I was with NVIDIA for a good 14, 15 years. In between, I took a shift from NVIDIA just to see, how the rest of the world is working. I joined Samsung for around close to 4 years in their headquarters in South Korea, which was again a very different experience. Working from a US culture to a Korean culture, that was a big shift. But yeah, I enjoyed. I learned a lot. Because my major experience has been with NVIDIA. I've worked with global giants, global leaders across geography. I've led teams. My main experience has been in developing camera softwares. And today, in this AI world, I feel really lucky that I stuck to camera because today, when you see AI and robotics in every segment, cameras are the eyes and the main sense organs. So definitely, it's going to be a technology that's going to live for a long, long time. I also feel somehow, the first job that you pick up is really, really important. And I really thank that, I didn't continue my career in the tech support industry, but or else I wouldn't know where I would have been today. Normally when you pick up the first job, even for freshers, if they are listening to this and if I can share my experience with them, the first job that you pick up, the company also pushes you in that direction. The company tries to train you in that direction, and somewhere or the other you start feeling that okay, that is what you have to do, and that is what you like to do. You're forced to think that you like to do that, but you have to think and understand what your likings are, and you have to move in that direction. So it's very important to choose your first job. And I was lucky, as I said, I got into this embedded domain early enough in my career, and that kind of shaped the entire rest of my career journey so far. So yeah, again, first job, very important.
Oh, what a great start to this conversation, Mr. Prayas. And that was such an impressive account. You painted that early moment with such clarity that it felt like we were standing right there beside you watching that spark take shape.
I'm happy that I'm able to share my experience. Like I said, people learn through variety of modes. Learning has been a constant thing, and that it should be one of the constant thing. The moment you stop learning, you feel that that's kind of the end of the road. But in the technology industry, in personal life as well, you got to keep learning. Everything, every day is a new day. Every day you learn something new, you move on, and that's how life is. I'm happy that I'm able to share my experience. Again, there are different ways of learning. Some learn through hard work, some learn through different people's experience, and that's how great leaders are. We have learned a lot from our leaders. I hope that I'm able to share some good insight, and the listeners are able to learn from my experience as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Please, Mr. Prayas. You have worked with everything from mobile software system to high performance camera features. Today, many companies are rushing to adopt the latest tools from Salesforce to data cloud trans solutions. But here's the thing, they often end up just collecting tools, not building true growth engines. So, when you walk into a new client situation, what are the first few signs that tell you this is just a tech collection, not a growth engine? That is part A of my question. How do you turn it around, and which part do you tackle first? People, processes, or the architecture?
That's a great question. In my 19 years of career, I have had this situation once at least. I know when I was working with the South Korean giant. I remember we were trying to identify a solution, and different companies had come to pitch their solution to us. And one of the companies I mean, distinctly, I remember they had excellent specs, when they share the offline specs, and we were so impressed with them. And however, on the day of the presentation, the specs that we had read versus what we were seeing actually in their demo were totally off. And we were kind of surprised, like, what's going on? This is not the same product that we've had reviewed in the offline specs. Even the team there, they were not able to give us satisfactory answers because we kind of were expecting a better answer, and we already had a benchmark by ourselves, and they were much below that as well. Uh, we started to probe them more. We asked different questions, hoping that we will get some insight and some motivation as to why we are moving ahead with them. But unfortunately, we didn't get any. Obviously, we ended up choosing another solution over them. But there were a lot of learnings. Come back to my analysis of that. I feel that somewhere there was a disconnect between the top management people. The process were also flawed. I won't say flawed, but there were gaps in the process. Either the company had misaligned priorities, or the people taking up the job, they were not serious about this project. They just underestimated or overestimated their project. Maybe the leadership was also misaligned with the priorities. They were focusing on somewhere else while they were trying to pitch something else, and there was complete chaos over there. We did end up choosing up another solution. But yeah, like I said, a company, when you pitch a particular solution or when you go with a particular solution, the software design is really, really important. Once you have a good, strong, solid design, the flexibility matters a lot. Tomorrow, if you want to enhance the software or you want to bring in some quick hacks or quick fixes or quick new solutions to catch up with the market, it's really easy. But if the design is very tight, very focused to a particular market or a particular segment or a particular product, it becomes extremely difficult to plug in new features or plug in new code. And then once you start reinventing or redesigning the whole solution that you are going to provide, it becomes very expensive, not in terms of money, but in terms of the effort, the time, and eventually the money as well. That's how the software industry works. The design has to be extremely solid. End of the day, we all have to understand, that the product that we make should be able to get into the market. Should be the users should be able to use it. Doesn't matter, how much excellent engineers are there in the company. They might build a very sophisticated rocket, but if it's not going to take off, then it doesn't mean your engineering, whatever capability you have. So we all together as employees, as management, as a company, we all should understand where our product is going. It should be clear in everybody's mind. Once it is clear in everybody's mind, even the most junior engineer, you never know, might come up with an excellent idea. And I've seen engineers, when I was in NVIDIA, I know a couple of very junior interns, who are now directors in the company. They understood the product, they understood the gap in the market, they kind of tried to bridge it by themselves, and they succeeded in their career. That's how it is very important to understand what your market product fit is, what you are developing, what the market can expect more. That's where the enhancement comes in. Um, Looking into, coming back to the analysis of the real life situation that you gave, like I said, we again, it's what I think. I don't know if it is right or wrong. We never got to know what the real situation was. But the company that came to pitch in, we definitely saw some big flaws in process, in management, in the people, in everything. I remember Jensen Huang, and the world now knows him much more than they knew earlier. He keeps constantly saying, intellectual honesty is something that is really, really important. For everybody, for the company, for the management, for the engineer. If the engineer doesn't report it to the higher management, and the senior manager doesn't report it to the up level, the decisions can't be made on time and the corrections can't be made on time. So Jensen Huang's key success has been repeatedly saying, fail early and be intellectually honest. Even I have learned this a hard way, but I know for sure this is going to be an excellent mantra for a lot of people who are hearing this.
Indeed, it is. And the way you described those moments inside a client's system, it genuinely felt like stepping into a control room where everything is switched on, yet nothing is actually moving.
That is correct, and that's where I also feel that teamwork is really important. If in a company there are different roles and the predefined roles, right? There is a marketing team that goes out to sell your product for the company to earn money for all the engineers and for all the employees. There's an engineering team who actually develop products. So there has to be a very tight collaboration among the marketing team who are doing the research, who try to understand what the market demands are versus what the engineering team is developing. Like I said, you might develop an excellent rocket, but if it doesn't take off, then what would the marketing team go and show to the clients? We have a rocket, but it doesn't fly. It doesn't make any sense like that. So yeah, I mean, the teamwork has to be excellent, and there has to be I won't say scattered leadership, but there has to be one person who understands the whole big game and should take the final call. That is really, really important. Sometimes we have scattered leadership, everyone's taking decisions at different levels, and no one is the master of the game or the ringmaster of the entire circus. There has to be one master, definitely, but he cannot do it alone, so he has to, kind of distribute and develop that whole teamwork kind of environment where everyone is talking to each other openly, without any fear. There are different ways of, or rather, I would say, there are the company strategies are different. The working models are different. Some don't believe in hierarchy. Like South Korean companies, they have a very strong hierarchy. You cannot just jump one level and bypass your senior boss. But in US companies, to a great extent in Europe as well, it's pretty flat. Everyone is open for conversation. You can approach to anybody. So yeah, open conversation, teamwork are the best mantras.
Absolutely. And Mr. Prayas, what's the most common misconception companies have when it comes to integrating multiple tools into their tech ecosystem? Many businesses think simply adding more tools will solve the challenges. Now, from your perspective, what's the biggest mistake they are making, and how do you help them see that the solution lies elsewhere?
Sure, that's a great question, Sunny. And I like to give you my perspective. Again, no, when I say my perspective, I don't think there is a right or a wrong to this answer. It just depends how the current situation is and what the think tank of the company they're doing to save the company or to save the product, right? Um, Again, I go back to my previous conversation. I think every employee should understand they are drawing salaries, but they should also understand that where does the salary come from, right? If the company is doing good, if the product is excellent, if the product has a good market, then everybody is happy. The customer is happy, the employee is happy, the company is happy, and the entire ecosystem is happy, right? But we also have to understand that we cannot just have excellent engineers without a roadmap. We cannot just have one small product go into the market, don't know what is going to be the next phase of the company. So it's very important to understand where the money is flowing in. And as an engineer, if I am developing a product, I need to understand where or who is going to use my product. Again, like I said, it was easier to say for me after 19 years working in the industry, but it's a lesson learned the hard way. But for the listeners who are listening, if they can understand and start practicing this from the beginning, it might help them in their career ahead. I remember this light joke that was all over the internet and in the tech industry when the cloud computing came, right? People were saying all different definitions of cloud computing. Some were making fun. Oh, today if I am uploading my data onto the cloud and the monsoon goes away or the cloud moves, where does my data go? How do I retrieve my data? So you need to understand that, sometimes the technology, right? Even though it sounds simpler, there are a lot of details into it. But there's a reason why the technology sometimes is made, sound simpler so that it's easier for people to understand, not get into the literal sense of it, but understand what it will do for you, how you can maximize the whole situation. Even for now, you name it, AI. There's a lot of scare in the market that AI is going to take away your job. But all the leaders who understand what AI is, they are very clearly saying AI is not going to take away your job. You have to upgrade your skills. You have to keep learning. You have to ensure that you are a proper market fit. You are ready to develop products that the new age is going to need. And 5 years later, if you want to see a product, then you have to start working from now. You cannot start working 5 years later when the entire world or the entire tech industry has taken one step ahead. And then if you start, you're already behind. So every world leader is saying, don't worry about AI, upgrade your skills, understand what AI is, understand how you can integrate the AI part in your product, and take your product to another level altogether. There are companies to support it. There is definitely a promising architecture and technology coming up. So let's make use of it. Coming back, to that rocket example I gave, you need to understand, right, what the company's position is. What are you actually marketing for? I remember an example, Samsung, back in 2011, they developed this stylus-based phone called the Note series. Somewhere around that time, Motorola also pitched in another phone wherein you can just slide that phone into a display and a very thin keyboard, and that phone will turn your very lightweight display and keyboard into a laptop. I don't know for what reason. I don't know what happened. That product never kicked off. I don't know if it was a marketing failure, if it was there were technology gaps. Because when we started using that and we started understanding the product, it felt like a killer product at that time. The laptop industry would have been absolutely, blasted by that time. And then suddenly, soon after that, the tablet industry came in. Maybe it was a strategic decision not to use that and to promote the tablet as a product. But whatever, at that point of time, we thought that that Motorola product was a killer, but it never picked up. Sometimes companies make these decisions, take shortcuts as well to fix their problem. Till the time it works out well for them, it's good. Sometimes the shortcuts that they take are calculated. Sometimes they are not. When they are not calculated, they pay a heavy fine later on. But yeah, like I said, it's not a right way or the wrong way. It just means what the company is doing and what the company thinks is the right at that moment.
Rightly said, Mr. Prayas. So, given your experience and your leadership roles at companies like NVIDIA and Samsung, how do you ensure that cross-functional teams are aligned when adopting new technologies? And what strategies do you use to break down silos between departments, ensuring everyone is working towards a common goal with a shared understanding of how new tools will impact the business?
Oh, great question, Sunny. I have had the opportunity to work with a US giant as well as a Korean giant. And I must tell you, the culture is very, very, very different. I cannot say for sure that the Korean company I work for had a very open culture. The hierarchy was very, very, very strong. The information sharing wasn't that big as we experienced in a US company. Maybe one of the reason was, the Korean company, they believe that, the Korean culture or the Korean language is so strong in them that it's difficult for them to immediately trust a foreigner in their land. That's not in the US. US companies, they feel product is everything. You have to think about the product. They are open to language. English anyway is a very commonly used language. So yeah, there's a big difference in cross culture, cross team culture in Samsung and NVIDIA. But yeah, as long as it works for them, I think the world is happy, nothing to complain about, right? But yeah, in NVIDIA, I experienced this. There's nothing hidden, until and unless there's a very secret project going on, which the rest of the world should not know. Everything is open. Every engineer has access to all the documents in NVIDIA, all the hardware specs. He's free to learn. He's free to set up meetings with other managers, engineers to discuss about a product, discuss about a problem. You know, in technology companies, when you come up with a product, it is not just one team working on a particular product, right? There are small portions of the whole product developed by different teams. Some are scattered, some are in the same office. But at the same time, you need to understand that the top leader has to ensure that everyone comes together to understand what each one is working on. I might be developing a solution where I feel that, okay, it's self-sufficient. I'm the perfect. But the other team who is dependent on my work, if they're not able to use my work, if they don't have enough documentation, if they don't have even use cases, it's waste of time and energy and every money, everything. If I'm developing something that is not being usable by another person. So it's extremely important. Plus, at the same time, people end up, because they start working in dark, not knowing what is happening, not having enough team collaborations. They start over engineering things, which is not required. Which let's stick to the target, whatever we have decided. If there's a new idea, let's discuss it out. Let's set up meetings. Let's invite others or other stakeholders, and let the discussion go in a proper format, not just ad hoc. Bring in new processes or new code or new features if not required, right? Yeah, but then talking about collaborations with different teams, I think whoever is the top leader, taking the all shots, he needs to understand the full picture. For that, he needs a good dashboard where each team is, where what the teams are working on. Are they aligned? Are they misaligned? Are they behind? Are they ahead of time? What are they doing with respect to the single goal that the company has? So yeah, I think overall a good dashboard that would really help. Obviously, the top manager or the top leader in the company, he will not be able to do it by himself. So he has to, have a strong team backing him up, supporting him at all the time. And that's how good teamwork is.
That was incredibly insightful, Mr. Prayas. Thank you for sharing those insights with us today. And now I invite you to the next segment, which is rapid fire round. There are no right answers here; they are just instinctive answers. So, are you ready for it?
Let's go for the rapid fire. I'm all excited for the rapid fire. Yeah.
Okay, so here I shoot you with the first question. Rapid fire round. First question: if you could switch lives with anyone for a day, who would it be?
Oh, a lot of people. But I like to choose two in particular. One is Mr. Intelligent Investor, Mr. Warren Buffett, and MS Dhoni. The incredible cricketer who has won a lot of medals for us. Yeah, so two people, Mr. Warren Buffett and Mr. MS Dhoni.
Okay, so do you find time to watch IPL? His comeback?
I try to find time, but sometimes over cricket is actually losing the cricket's fun. But yeah, if I find people talking about cricket, I quickly switch on the TV and watch. But I don't rigorously, religiously start the game at the toss time.
Okay, great. Next question: what's your guilty pleasure?
Binge watching, I'd say. Binge watching is my guilty pleasure. Yes.
Okay. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
The most comforting food I would say is khichdi for me. I can eat 365 days a year and I will never get bored for it.
Bingo. Great. Uh, all right. So if you could have dinner with any historical figure, probably having khichdi with a historical figure, who would it be and why?
Oh, I don't know if this person is historical or not, but I would definitely want to have a sit down with MS Dhoni, Mahendra Singh Dhoni, the ex-Indian cricketer or the captain. And I'm sure that he would love khichdi because he's very grounded. He is very humble. That's what we know of him. But what I would like to learn from him is, cricket is a very dynamic game. You don't have a script to play cricket, or for that matter, play any sport. There's no script for that. But whoever has known MS Dhoni, his composure, his calmness, I am sure that it is not the calmness that is inside, but he definitely shows that he's not under any stress. And even if your captain, if you yourself are very composed, your decisions are calculated. Even the opponent loses the game right over there. So I would definitely want to have a conversation with him regarding this, how he maintains his composure, his balance, never gets angry, at least never shows his anger, never shows his anxiety. And I'm sure that, he would have different answers at different point because I also think that he himself doesn't know the answer. Maybe it just comes naturally to him, but there has to be some sort of training at some point of time in his life which actually has made him like this. So would like to understand from him what made him like this and what has been his past.
Great. So count me in this random.
Certainly, I would if only I get a chance.
All right. Okay. Since it's a rapid fire round, we have to move. What's a hobby you have always wanted to pick up but never did?
Oh, great. I always wanted to play a musical instrument. I have tried different instruments, but for some or the other reason, I was never able to continue with it. But someday, I promise I'll have that hobby developed in me. And I would also like to say, having a hobby is really, really important. You cannot work throughout your life. You cannot do one particular thing throughout your life. At some point of time, you would need some personal time, and that probably helps in focus as well.
Rightly said. Okay. If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
I'd say I'll go with farming, right? One, it helps you um, develop patience because once you grow a seed, it immediately doesn't start giving you fruits and returns. Second, you are grounded. You understand what your roots are. You There's a lot of technical analysis that goes there. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I would definitely love to get into farming and not only get into traditional farming, but also include the technology and the whole buzz about AI and stuff into farming. There's a lot to learn when you start farming.
Great. So, what's your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
I sometimes, so binge watch is one. Second, I also cook occasionally. It's a different story that, not many people like my, final product of the cooking or whatever I have cooked, my dish. I end up eating most of the time by myself or dump it out. But then every time I learn that, okay, don't do the same mistake, and I'm getting better at it, I would say.
All right, great. That was nice. What's the most random item on your bucket list?
I think in my bucket list, if the most random item would be traveling to Antarctica. I've traveled quite a few places. I would really love to go to Antarctica. I have heard different horror stories as well as interesting stories, but I would definitely want to explore that part of the world.
Great. What's something you have never done, but you think everyone should try at least once?
I would say not done, I would say, but everyone should at least try to have a hobby. Like I said, hobbies are very important. That will never make you feel lonely alone. Even if you are alone and if you have a good hobby, you can just pick it up from wherever or whichever part of the world you are in. So definitely one should have a good hobby. Not an expensive one though, but something that you can uh, any moment you can start and keep yourself engaged with. I have struggled to have one. I would definitely want to have one.
Okay, great. So, last question of the rapid fire round. If you could speak any language fluently, which one would you choose?
Traveling has been of late. I'm enjoying traveling, particularly, after since I got married, we have been traveling a lot. My wife is really excited about traveling a lot. I've traveled quite a few places in the world. I would want to like to learn Spanish, because it's the world's most spoken language. And the primary reason is that will help me travel different places, explore different cultures, understand different ways of living life in a particular area. Uh, yeah, I would definitely want to take up a course or learn the Spanish language.
Okay, so that was all for the rapid fire round, and that was fun. That was quick. I really loved all the answers of yours. So, Mr. Prayas, in your line of work, especially when dealing with CRM systems, marketing technology, and customer data, leaders are often balancing business pressure, technical realities, and customer trust. From your experience, what's the most common ethical gray area that leaders walk into during large MarTech or CRM programs? And when these pressures don't align, how do you personally decide where to draw the line between what the business wants and what is actually responsible to deliver to maintain that customer trust?
Wow, it's an interesting question, and I'd say it's a difficult question to answer too, Sunny. There is no right or wrong when it comes to a company, when they're pitching their product, right? Like I said in one of the earlier answers, there are shortcuts that the company takes sometimes. Some are calculated, some are not. When they are not calculated, they get into that risk zone, but if they are calculated, they know what to have as a mitigation, when you enter into that situation. But yeah, I would strongly feel that every company goes through it. Every project goes through it. I don't know of any project which has not had any hiccup in the last day of the release. Every time you see or to speak to a friend of mine or engineer in some another company, say we have a project release and we have to work late. That's kind of made a default because things do not go smooth. There are unexpected situations. You end up into something unexpected, which you did not foresee or which you did not anticipate, and it's completely fine. However, it is important, to understand how to deal with such situations. You need to have the right people around you who take the right decisions, or rather, I would say, who help you take the right decisions. Because end of the day, everyone cannot be deciding. It has to be one person who has to evaluate everything, the plus minus checks, balances everything, and then finally take a call. Because end of the day, he is responsible for anything and everything that happens to the project or the product. So yeah, companies take shortcut. We have to understand uh, what is the best for that particular moment and for that particular project at that time. So let's keep it simple. The top management needs to have a big dashboard to understand where we are going. They need to have intermediate goals. They cannot just pass on the target and meet at the end, thinking that okay, everything will be done on time. We have to have intermediate goals to realize where the project is heading to. If there are glaring gaps, we need to immediately take action, take corrective action, fix it, and let the teams know that this is what is happening next. There is a shift in the product direction or product strategy or whatever it is. The top management has to be extremely clear about the goals. Sometimes the goals they are discussed in meeting rooms. The changes are discussed in the meeting rooms, but they are not translated back to the engineer or the lower level working staff. So they keep guessing and doing a lot of different activities, whereas the top management's focus is completely different now. So it's very important. The communication part has to be really good. Again, I have learned it a hard way. But yeah, every day is a new learning. And I'm happy that I'm able to share this experience with all.
Great, Mr. Prayas. So before we wrap up our conversation, one last question. What made you decide to step into Directors Institute at this stage of your journey? And what were you hoping to gain by joining? And how has the program influenced your perspective on leadership and governance in the tech space?
Excellent. After close to 2 decades of industry exposure and experience, I consciously took a career break. I wanted to support my family. My wife is also busy doing something else, and I wanted to, sit back, understand, and plan for the next phase of my career. I really want to excel professionally as well as personally in the next phase of my career. I was surfing the internet and I came across Directors Institute, and I'm happy to get introduced to the company. I learned about their programs. I like the way how they have kind of integrated and collaborated with the European universities, getting a prestigious certificate from Oxford. While learning the good practices and the do's in the industry is definitely going to be very, very, very exciting. I also look forward to use this opportunity to kind of improve on my skills, get into a position in another company where your voice is heard. It's very important. You might have great ideas, but if you're not in the right position in the company and people are not listening to you, people are not hearing you, your ideas don't make any sense. So it's very important to be at the right position, and I hope that I would use this platform given by Directors Institute to excel in that area. Make products, make companies, make this industry a better place in terms of governance, as well as good practices that I learned through the whole process. That's what my hope is.
Great to hear that, Mr. Prayas. And let me tell you, this has been an incredibly insightful conversation. From your deep expertise in mobile technology and camera systems to your thoughtful approach to leadership and ethics, it's clear that your work has not only shaped the tech industry, but also set a standard for how innovation should be approached with integrity and responsibility. So thank you so much for joining us today. And what really stands out to me the most today is your commitment to building systems that prioritize long-term trust over short-term gains. A message we all can take to heart in this fast-paced, tech-driven world. So thank you once again for joining us.
Thanks, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this special episode of Space Time with Leaders. I'm your host, Sunny Pancholi, and we will catch you next time with more inspiring stories from leaders who are shaping the future of business. Until then, stay curious, stay driven, and keep innovating.